At 3:41 a.m., 16 FP-1 strike drones, fixed wing, 6-meter wingspan, expendable, cross central Russia at 160 kilometers per hour, 400 meters above dark farmland, converging on the eastern Moscow region. 2 Wildberries fulfillment hubs sit at the end of those headings, the backbone of Russia's commercial logistics network, and the same pipeline that moves body armor and drone components to the front between boxes of winter clothing. Russia fields the densest integrated air defense network on the continent. Tonight, not a single battery covers either building, and the network runs more than 200 facilities exactly like these, every one of them soft, every one of them mapped. The fire that starts tonight in Moscow will spread south. It will not stop until it reaches Crimea. Over 4 consecutive windows, 48 FP-1 drones would launch from different positions across Ukrainian-controlled territory. Each night aimed at a different piece of Russia's logistics map. Each cell rail-launched from ground the previous night's crew had already cleared. The campaign would run from the Moscow suburbs to the Crimean Peninsula. Tonight was the first window. The 16 had lifted off nearly 4 hours earlier. The first cell put 5 FP-1 drones on the longest route, 650 kilometers toward a hub deep in the eastern Moscow region. Each FP-1 carried 60 kilograms of payload on a 7-hour fuel load. No control link, no satellite fix, just a stored course system holding heading through the dark. At 50,000 euros per airframe, every one cost less than the cargo on a single warehouse pallet. 56 minutes later, the second cell launched 11 drones from the same position. 5 toward Kotovsk on a 350-kilometer route, and 6 on headings that track toward other Wildberries facilities scattered across the region, carrying no warheads. The 6 were bait, unarmed drones aimed at real buildings so that every heading on the screen looked like an attack the defense could not afford to ignore. Within the hour, Russian radar would see all 16. It would not be able to tell which ones to kill. By 3:38 a.m., the bait drones crossed into regional air defense coverage. A Kasta low-altitude surveillance radar, decimeter band, sweeping a 150-kilometer envelope every 3 to 10 seconds, painted the contacts and pushed 16 tracks to the command node. 5 converging on Kotovsk, 5 on a deeper heading into the Moscow region, and 6 angling toward warehouses scattered west. Every track looked identical. There was no way to tell which carried warheads. Detection was not the problem. The command node routed the 5 Kotovsk tracks to the nearest battery that could fire, a Pantsir point defense system covering an airfield 32 kilometers to the northwest. The crew found them immediately. 5 slow, low, fixed-wing contacts, 12 surface-to-air missiles loaded on the rails. Then they ran the intercept geometry. The 20-kilometer engagement bubble was centered on the airfield, not the warehouse. The 5 drones were tracking 11 kilometers beyond its edge, and every second carried them farther out of reach. The crew watched each contact inch toward the warehouse. They could not launch a single missile. The system had nothing wrong with it. It was pointed at the wrong building. 6 of those 16 tracks were the unarmed bait. Each flew toward a real warehouse, and each forced the command node to classify it and decide where to send interceptors, while hundreds of other contacts crossed the same screens across the national raid. The 6 would pass their targets without slowing, run dry, and come down in Russian farmland before dawn. The 5 armed drones kept closing on Kotovsk. At 3:49 a.m., the first effects reached Kotovsk. 5 FP-1 drones struck the warehouse complex after 500 kilometers and 3 hours of autonomous flight. Fire started inside. Evacuation was immediate. Not fast enough for everyone. The first strike looked like the whole event. It was not. The 5 tracks on the deeper heading, The ones no battery was ever assigned had been airborne an hour longer, covering 650 kilometers toward the second target. When Kotovsk was already burning, they were still 25 kilometers out and closing. At 3:52 a.m., a Psylocke electronic warfare station activated 1.8 kilometers ahead of the lead drone's path, an anti-UAV jammer built to sever control links and spoof satellite navigation. At 160 kilometers per hour, the FP-1 would cross its broadcast envelope in 40 seconds. 40 seconds against a drone that carried neither dependency, no control link to sever, no satellite fix to spoof. The FP-1 bored straight through on inertial guidance that had held heading for more than 4 hours. The jamming degraded terminal accuracy, drift measured in tens of meters, but the drone was aimed at a roofline covering 250,000 square meters. Missing a loading bay still put the payload inside the building. Heading was the one thing it had never asked a satellite for. At 3:53 a.m., the first FP-1 struck the Electrostall complex. The 60-kilogram warhead did not need to destroy 250,000 square meters. It punched through the roof and detonated inside rack storage stacked 12 meters high. And the fire climbed the gaps between the racks faster than the sprinklers could react. A second impact severed the water delivery piping. 3 more warheads struck across the next 40 seconds, each one opening a new section of roof. Suppression collapsed, and smoke drove every worker still inside toward the exits. Electrostall burned for days. The hub shut down, and more than 88,000 sellers lost the inventory inside. Body armor, optics, electronics, children's toys, everything on those racks, gone. Russia had 2 nights to study what had happened. It would learn. It would not learn fast enough.
2 nights later, the attack came back at a scale that made the first night look like a probe. More than 400 drones crossed into the Moscow region in a single overnight window. Not 16 threading one seam, but a flood spread across the entire capital zone. The FP-1s aimed at the Wildberries network moved inside that flood, hidden among hundreds of other tracks headed for oil depots, rail yards, and industrial parks. The defense could no longer choose the right building. It could barely choose at all. By the time the radars had classified the leading edge of the raid, the command network was triaging, pulling interceptors toward whatever looked most valuable and accepting that everything else would arrive unopposed. Koledino, the Wildberries hub closest to the capital, was one of the buildings the defense managed to cover. Its workers were evacuated, and the complex came through the night intact. That was the win. It cost everything behind it. Southeast of Koledino, in the Domodedovo district, sat Yuzhna Vorota, the Southern Gate, a logistics park of more than 600,000 square meters, larger than any single warehouse hit on the first night. Wildberries stored here. So did Alibaba. So did half the import chain that fed the capital's shelves. And since the start of the year, the park had been managed by a foundation whose board of trustees was chaired by Vladimir Putin himself. The drones now closing on it were about to burn a building that traced, on paper, back to the president's own circle. The FP-1s reached it while the air defense was still committed elsewhere. The first warhead opened the roof. What followed was not the contained rack fire of Electrostall. It was a structural fire across 600,000 square meters, feeding on packaging and fuel and pressurized stock until the blaze generated its own wind. Fire crews could not ring a building this size. They could only work its edges while the center burned unreachable. The smoke column rose high enough to be tracked from orbit. 5 separate fire sites burned across the Moscow region before dawn. An oil depot in Podolsk was among them. The Southern Gate was the largest. 400 drones, 1 hub saved, and one of the biggest logistics complexes in the region gutted while the defense was busy saving it. The maths of the first night had inverted. On night 1, the problem was a battery pointed at the wrong building. Now there were too many buildings and not enough sky to cover them. The campaign did not stay in Moscow. It went south and it split. Until now, everything had come at one region at a time. The defense's whole problem had been depth. How many drones it could stop before they reached one patch of sky. The third night changed the question. 12 FP-1s lifted off on two separate axes, 400 kilometers apart. 6 toward Krasnodar on the Black Sea coast, 6 toward Nevinnomyssk in the Simferopol interior. 2 cities, 2 air defense sectors, 1 attack. And the sectors could not help each other. The Nevinnomyssk group flew the longer road, and it launched first, roughly 75 minutes ahead of the Krasnodar cell, so both would arrive in the same pre-dawn window. By the time the southern radars caught the first contacts, the two threads were already too far apart to defend as one. At 3:48 a.m., the Krasnodar sector picked up its 6 inbound drones and began working the intercept. It never got the chance to finish. 14 minutes later, 400 kilometers east, the Nevinnomyssk sector lit up with 6 more, and now each sector was fighting its own battle alone, with no interceptors to lend and no warning to spare. At 4:07 a.m., the first drones went into the Krasnodar hub. The warehouse opened along its roofline, and a column of black smoke climbed over the coast, wide enough to be photographed from across the city. An oil depot nearby caught in the same wave and added its own fire to the skyline. Evacuation cleared the floor, not completely. 14 minutes after that, Nevinnomyssk burned. The FP-1s came through the roof of a 94,000 square meter warehouse, and the fire took hold faster than crews could reach the core. Helicopters ran water drops from above, but the heat column pushed them back, and the drops fell short of what the blaze was eating. The nearest reinforcements were 400 kilometers away, tied down at Krasnodar. There were none to send. 2 cities, 2 fires, 1 night. The defense had spent the whole campaign learning to concentrate, and the attacker had just made concentration impossible. The last night reached farther than any before it, and gave its drones the least room to get there. 16 FP-1s went up in 2 groups, 4 hours apart. The northern group climbed away first and turned towards St. Petersburg, 950 kilometers of Russian airspace ahead of them. 4 bait drones, 4 aimed at a warehouse in Shusharai, 4 at a logistics center in Novosaratovka. At 160 kilometers an hour, that route would burn 5 hours and 56 minutes of a 7-hour tank. 64 minutes of fuel to spare. It was not the cushion it sounded like. As the group pushed north, a headwind dragged their speed toward 140, and the flight time climbed with every kilometer. 6 hours and 47 minutes now, the reserve shrinking to 13 minutes in the air. Every course change around a live air defense sector cost more of it, and none of it could be won back. These drones had no abort command and no way home. Each one was flying a sum that resolved to one of 2 answers: the target or a Russian field with a live warhead and a dry tank. The southern group launched 4 FP-1s on a 300-kilometer run at the Wildberries sorting center in Simferopol, deep in occupied Crimea. 2 hours of flight against the North's 7. They would cross into the peninsula in the same dark window the northern drones reached St. Petersburg, though they left a quarter of a day later. One campaign, 1,685 kilometers wide, about to land as 2 alarms in one dawn. At 5:48 a.m., the northern drones went in. The Shushari hub off Moskovskoye Highway took the first hits and shut down. 6 minutes later, Novosaratovka caught fire, and workers were pushed out of the logistics center near Utkina Zavod as the roof began to burn. Wildberries pulled the plug on every operation across St. Petersburg and the Leningrad region. 2 hubs alight, both operations dead, smoke climbing over the northern approaches. And while those fires were still spreading, a third alarm came in from the far end of the map, Simferopol. 4 FP-1s came through the roof of the southernmost Wildberries node on the occupied peninsula. 1,685 kilometers from the fires still burning outside St. Petersburg. Staff ran for the dark. The sorting center that fed the last major supply line into Crimea went offline in the same hour the north was burning.
No single air defense umbrella stretched from the Baltic to the Black Sea. Nothing Russia could move would close both ends at once. The physical destruction of the final night belonged to the north. The meaning belonged to Crimea. The next morning, a Wildberries hub in Yekaterinburg, more than 1,700 kilometers east of Moscow, evacuated its workforce on a drone threat. Workers returned 4 hours later, no damage. But the evacuation itself carried the final message. Every Wildberries facility in Russia now had reason to treat every alarm as real, whether an FP1 was inbound or not. 8 hubs hit across 4 nights. More than 10% of Russia's online fulfillment capacity knocked offline. 444,000 square meters of warehouse space from the first 3 nights alone. And 3 more hubs burning after the 4th. And 60 billion rubles in property damage caused by expendable airframes that cost 50,000 euros each. The network did not fail because Russia lacked air defense. It failed because more than 200 commercial buildings cannot be hardened the way airbases can. And an attacker that shifts geography faster than defenses adapt will always find the next warehouse unprotected. Somewhere inside Ukrainian-controlled territory, a launch crew is already loading the next set of navigation files. Every remaining Wildberries hub has a stored course pointed at its roof.